hang on a second. Before you get really angry at me for teabagging, let me explain. Teabagging is not something that I normally resign myself to doing. It's not something I do when I get angry or anything like that. It's pretty much reserved to people trying to camp the spawn with the helicopter, which is just atrocious. And I'm not saying it's not fair play, but I think it deserves a teabag if you can manage to kill the guy. Maybe if you kill somebody that's up on a rooftop that they only have access to because they ride the map up there, that might be okay too in my book, but not something to do just to brag about a kill or something like that. Now, this gameplay today is actually my second jet commentary for Battlefield 3. The first one was approximately 2 weeks after the game came out. You can go check it out if you want to. My thoughts on the jets haven't changed that much. In fact, they haven't really changed at all. It's just I've become obviously much better in them at this point in the game, being, what is it, 3 or 4 months after the game's release now. And here's a typical score that I get when I try to play jets. 5-0 and now 4-0. And here's an example of why. Okay, I'm on this guy's tail, and my teammate comes out of nowhere and says, I want to help, I want to help. Boom! Crashes into me and we're both dead. Thanks, bro. And here's another example of what usually happens when I try to get a good Conquest gameplay. That guy crashes, my teammate crashes, and then that helicopter over there crashes. Literally within 2 seconds, 3 air vehicles crash and 4 people are dead. It's like, how am I supposed to get a good gameplay? So that's why I'm bringing you Rush again. I know the last gameplay I did was Rush. I wanted to bring you Conquest, but it just has not worked out. And I'd rather bring you a gameplay that I don't have to cut up a lot. And I don't mind cutting up gameplays a lot, but I feel like I'm doing a montage instead of a gameplay commentary if I have to over-edit. And so it's kind of difficult to get a gameplay with the jet where you do some kind of useful damage, whether it's disabling vehicles, destroying vehicles. Here I even take out the jet before it gets off the ground. It's something I usually actually do. You might consider it cheap or ridiculous, but later on in this game I get lazy and I stop doing it because I'm pretty confident that no one on the other team can take me out. And I freaking love the jets for one main reason, and I'm trying to explain it to you in the best way I can. Okay, people want to talk about things that are overpowered. If there's anything in the game that I think is overpowered, it's probably the USAS frag rounds, and it's not just because it makes me angry to be killed by it. I do get angry when someone kills me with it, because I just feel like, man, could you be any less of a cheese ball? Could you use something else, please, sir? But it's frustrating because it closes the skill gap between good players and bad players. Skilled players and unskilled players, I think would be a better way to say it. Skilled and unskilled. It begins to eliminate the gap between them just by its very nature. And that is why I do not think the jets are overpowered. And here's one example of why the jets are not overpowered. The poor F-35 doesn't ever stand a chance. I can hover in place, and that automatically makes me awesome. Actually, just makes you really, really easy to destroy. The flankers are so much better. I mean, the hovering part's cool, but it's really overall not that advantageous in my opinion, especially considering the flankers are going to be up for most of the game and they're just going to be pounding on you. So I almost feel bad for them, but at the same time, definitely not going to hold me back from shooting them down. But the skill gap between the jets is so much larger. You put a good player, a skilled player in a jet, he is going to train wreck the entire enemy team and they are not going to have any vehicles to speak of. You put an unskilled player in the jet and you might as well ignore him. He's not really going to be able to do anything, especially not shoot you down. If you're in the opposing jet, you can basically just ignore him. Alright, that's pretty much my argument for anyone trying to say that the jets are overpowered, even though I'm not the best in them, to be sure. Like yesterday, I got shot down twice in the same game. I was literally furious. I hate being shot down because I feel like I should win every fight, and that's sort of a flaw of mine on my own. I feel, I'm not gonna lie, when I'm in the jets, it's basically the biggest ego trip I have because it's just so insanely easy to punish people who don't know how to shoot you down. And that leads me into my next point. I still am using the exact same loadout that I was using when I made the last video, which is stealth, flares, and rockets, and I'm gonna provide somewhat more of a justification for why I use that setup right now. And here's a good example right here. There's a missile coming at me. I've already used my flares, and missile's about to hit me. I pop them, and the missile misses. And I know that game volume probably isn't that high right now for you to hear it, so specifically because I'm trying to speak over it. But the reason that that missile did not hit me is because it took him that much longer to lock onto me with a stinger, and it thus gave me my flares time to recharge, and I just got to flare it off for free. And I could just, and that's speaking about stealth versus flares. I definitely will take stealth versus air radar. I didn't say that right. Air radar is useful. Don't get me wrong. Air radar is super sweet. It is just swell, and I don't have anything negative to say about it whatsoever. However, I will trade, especially in rush mode, maybe not as much in Conquest, but I will trade extra awareness and the ability to know where things are in relation to the jet for basically immunity to missiles, and that's obviously where flares comes in. I don't really think I need to make any sort of argument about why flares are better than ECM jammer or extinguisher. I could understand if you're in Conquest and you specifically want to go after the other jets, you might want to use extinguisher. That it can be useful for making an enemy jet think you're disabled and you're out of the fight. That's pretty much the only instance I think it's going to be useful in, so, and that's very limited, so I'm not going to use it. I'm going to stick with flares. And now we move on to rockets. Air-to-air missiles are not that useful. They're just not. Most people have flares. That's just how it is. There's no way to get around it. And so missiles are not going to be useful. And even in the time that you take to lock onto someone with missiles and fire them, you could have been shooting the cannon at them most of the time. And so the cannon is pretty much going to just be your bread and butter, which you want to rely on. The air-to-ground missile, while useful, I don't really need it to destroy tanks. In fact, the cannon just shreds them so much faster, especially considering you might get a disable, you might not. I think you actually do get a disable in Rush, because they're significantly stronger. The rockets are actually stronger in Rush 2 from the jets than they are the fighters in Conquest, if you didn't know that. And it's not as big of a damage threshold as the cannon, though. The cannon is way stronger in Rush than the jets in Conquest. And I mean way stronger, and it sort of makes sense considering you're shooting a 30mm, probably depleted uranium rounds, and they just chop up armor like butter, whereas the fighters have 20mm rounds. The jet versus jet, you don't really do any more damage versus their jets. And so, rambling on a little bit, back to the air-to-ground missile. There's two unique things about the air-to-ground missile, and that is it's easier to use than trying to use rockets, although you have to be closer. That's why I use, basically why I use rockets is so it's sort of a precursor to the cannon, where I can soften them up a good bit so that I can basically guarantee a kill with the cannon if I need to switch to it. The other basic advantage of the air-to-ground missile is when you switch to the air-to-ground missile cannon, you can spot infantry, and it actually makes taking out infantry pretty easy. But that's not really what the jet's role is. And what the jet's role is, your biggest priority is to take down their jet. It is the biggest threat to you, or jets if you're in Conquest. Biggest threat to you, biggest threat to your vehicles on the ground, because they're simply so fast and so devastating. Second priority is going to be the helicopters, especially in Conquest, the attack helicopter. You're going to want to get rid of it. Obviously, once again, so it can't shoot you, can't shoot at your fellow vehicles on the ground. It's not good. After that, you want to go after their vehicles, specifically their big battle tanks. If they have IFEs, then those, and then you're going to want to go after the jeeps. And usually by the time, if you manage to take all that stuff out, which is entirely possible, but if you manage to take all that stuff out, their jet's going to be respawning, their helicopter's going to be respawned. You just don't have time to go after infantry. And Battlefield 3 is absolutely a team-based game, and you have to know your role. And the jet's role is to basically limit the enemy team to infantry, and then let the rest of the people on your team take care of those infantry. That's basically the way I could describe it. I'm sorry if this commentary wasn't specifically about the gameplay. I just basically flew around shredding the other team into tiny little pieces with this Russian Frogfoot. It's just awesome. And I wish I got points for disabling and destroying the A-10. For some reason, it has just stopped working, and I also don't get credit for kills in the A-10. It is a glitch that DICE is aware of, and hopefully it will be fixed soon so I can get the points that I'm earning in the jets. Thank you very much for watching. Please do leave a like if you feel it deserves it. If you don't, whatever. It's not a big deal. And have a nice day.